Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. Joining me today is the cartoonist behind one of the absolutely best comic series out there, the graphic novel sensation from Scholastic Graphics, Amulet. It's Kazu Kibuishi. Thanks for coming on, Kazu.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start with Amulet. This is predominantly going to be about Amulet, but one of the things that I think is really interesting, going on right now is January 1st was officially the 10-year anniversary?
I guess so. We didn't really make an announcement or anything like that, but I just realized that I believe so. I think January 2008 was when book one was released. So yeah,
That's
10 years.
wild.
Uh-huh.
Is that a little surreal looking at that?
No, not really. No, I guess so. I mean, I don't know. Being a dad, you watch as your kids grow up so fast. You know, you see time kind of move by quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Amulet has been something I've been working on for so long that, 10 years doesn't sound like that much anymore. Do you know what I'm talking about? As you're getting older, 10 years doesn't sound like a lot. And I actually started the book, I'd say something like 20 years ago.
That was one of the things I was actually going to mention because you originally conceptualized it in college, right?
Yeah, I think I had the idea in high school, and then but I didn't know what to do with it. I thought it was just like a cool little small project, and then I started trying to work on it in college, and then after college I tried again, and I just realized it was too hard, or I decided it was too difficult,
Mm-hmm.
and I came back to it after I did Daisy Cutter.
Mm-hmm.
I might be ready, and I wasn't.
I think that's one of the funny things about comics, especially ones that are on the book market in particular, is that it's like the whole thing where they say it's like a glacier. You only see like part of it, the rest of it's under the water and everything. Like for you,
Uh,
Amulet has been this thing that's been around for 20 years almost, and we were just like, oh wow, 10th anniversary, and you're like, whoa, it's only been 10 years.
well, I mean, 10 years. What the coolest thing is seeing how. Readers who read it as kids are now adults,
Mm-hmm.
and I've met some of them, and they've turned out to be fine people, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them are even comic artists, professional comic artists now that read it as a kid and they're still doing it. But yeah, it makes me feel like I'm part of comics in a way that I wasn't when I started because I
Mm-hmm.
was starting out, and now I'm a veteran, and it feels good to be a veteran of the industry while still being relatively young. I turn 40 next week or this week, or end of this on the 8th,
Mm-hmm.
and so it feels good to feel like I know what I'm doing.
I know. I was gonna mention because you worked on the 15th anniversary covers for Harry Potter, and that's a perfect example of a story that people grew up with, and I think that's such an interesting place to be because it's Harry Potter was obviously specifically interesting because they had each year of school going along with it, so it's like you really literally could feel like you're growing up. But Amulet's the same way. It's like you grow up with this as the story is. I'm not saying the beginning was immature, but as it matures and progresses and everything like that,
Yeah, I
it's
get you.
really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I tried as best as I could to have like um, a grown up parent's viewpoint when I started the book, but I was in my 20s and I didn't have kids. I wasn't married yet, so really I had to do it from the framework of being the child,
Mm-hmm.
trying to what it was like being a kid, having to help my parents out when I was young, and now as a dad and as an educator, and I'm always out in schools and talking to kids all the time. Um, I'm much more comfortable in a role where I'm more of a guide. I'm
Mm-hmm.
more of a teacher type, um, and yeah, it's in that respect, like knowing what to write about is a lot easier these days. But knowing how much this like the work is being read or is in some way that becomes hard because the social responsibility aspect of it has grown.
Mm-hmm.
but my ability to do the job has grown with it over the course of the years. So um, I still feel like a kid in that regard because because now I'm not just a just somebody drawing cartoons. I'm somebody who has to teach millions of kids.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not what I expected to be doing, but it's cool.
Yeah, I love the point that you made about how like some of the people that you've talked to that grew up on the books are making their own comics now because I actually
Yeah,
wrote an article that looked at roughly speaking like what will the future of comics look like on people with people coming in who grew up on things like your work and like Raina's work and
yeah,
like Bone. Obviously Bone's been around for a lot longer, but at the same time it's like that's going to speak to how comics, for a long time people perceive comics as just superheroes, and now it's like, it's grown quite a bit. It'll be really interesting to see how that moves.
yeah. I've been fortunate to be able to have traveled around the world even prior to embarking on this project. And seeing how other cultures, notably countries in Europe and Japan, have brought comics into their culture or used comics as a way to bring people together, communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Seeing all that, knowing that even great like fantastic adventure comics are become really important cultural touchstones in other countries. I knew that was potentially going to be the case for new comics here. We're also in an age where in the movies everything's based on old comics, right?
Right.
And so that's playing out as well. But yeah, I guess I wasn't um, I wasn't shocked when things went this way. In fact, I'd say I'm actually kind of surprised it took this long. And now I've got the gray hairs and everything. I thought it was just going to happen so quick. Uh, so yeah, that's been surprising. I'm surprised that there's not that many people doing it.
Right.
Honestly, yeah, there just should be more. I don't. Where is everybody? I'm trying to. Where is everybody?
I think there's like a whole
Yeah,
generation coming up. I mean, I was
I
just
think. Right.
I was just at Emerald City Comic Con, and like, and the hilarious thing is I totally would have stopped by your table. I kept wandering around, and I like had no. I was like, where's Kazu and like Jen Wang and like all the other creators I want to see? And it turns out you guys were on a different floor, I think, than Artist
Yeah,
Alley.
yeah.
I
Artist
didn't find
Alley.
out until the last day.
It's kind of a hidden floor. But I wasn't there anyway, except for the last day.
Oh,
I
okay.
was finishing Amulet 8, and I try not to pull any all-nighters, but I did pull one, and it was like right in the middle of Emerald City.
Mm.
So I took one day off, and then I came in on Sunday on the kids' day,
Yeah.
and so I was there. Yeah,
So I do want to talk about I don't want to go all the way back to the beginning before like it got started and everything, but one thing I thought was really interesting when I was researching this was Amulet was originally announced in its press release as a 2-volume series, and as you just said, you're finishing book 8 and book 9 is going to be the end of the whole thing. Was
yes,
this
it will be.
no matter what? Uh,
Well,
was this time frame
there's
and
such
what
go
was that?
ahead. No, I mean, no, it's okay. I won't even. Yeah, and 9 is the end of this story.
Oh,
Yes.
so was this time frame and length something you considered a possibility when you're getting started, or did it kind of expand and contract as you went along?
I think it should have been something on my mind, but I really didn't think that it was going to be like this. This was supposed to be a practice run. I, I didn't think this was the book that I was going to put right next to Nausicaa and Bone, but it turns out that's exactly what happened. Uh, so maybe for the best. Maybe it's better that I don't over prepare.
Hmm.
Just be prepared for the moment, but not over prepare the project and like over bake it. I think some people, even myself, I think a lot of artists can tend to overthink the projects and then end up killing it before that it gets out to the reader and turns into something else,
Hmm.
uh, and so it's happened. I didn't plan it for it to be this long. That's true. I thought it was just going to be my one. I thought it was going to be a single book that was supposed to be my tribute to a lot of the stuff I grew up on in the '80s. much the
Hmm.
same way like Stranger Things and all that stuff is so popular now. I was paying tribute to the exact same things. But it was actually Scholastic that asked me to keep going and really look at it as something more than what I saw it as. So you can credit David Saylor with a lot of that. You know, he is a visionary art director, and he really he sees pretty far out ahead, and he had been trying to get me to stay on that track as well. You know, it was like when my first events for Amulet. Like I don't know if you saw that Publishers Weekly article about how Amulet sold 200 copies when it came out.
I did not
200
see
copies
that.
or 60,000 copies printed. Yeah, that didn't look good. But when it came out, there was like nobody showing up for any of my signings, and David Saylor was the one who would always tell me it was the same way for Joe, and meaning J.K. Rowling. You know,
Hmm.
he said these things take some time. You just got to stick with it. It's fine. You'll be fine. And I wasn't worried. I thought it was interesting. I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, here's it's fine. I guess this is good. And I'm glad that uh, Amulet has grown from that, from a place where we sold 200 copies right out of, to where it is now, because it kind of gives you a sense of pace, patience, and humility
Hmm.
that you would otherwise not have any ability to conceive of if success came at you like a freight train,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, if you, it's kind of like because it was like only 200 copies to start with, it was like it kind of taught you that you still got to work at it, as opposed to if it was like we've sold 1 million copies, you're like, I'm just gonna stop writing, I'm gonna stop drawing, I'm doing whatever I want, I'm just gonna hang out. This is
Uh,
great.
yeah, that didn't happen.
One thing I'm curious about the series is like the balancing act you have to do as a storyteller, because like you start out with like a potentially 1 volume or 2 volume series that expanded to 9 volumes. We're 7 volumes in now, there's a massive cast and there's a ton of story threads. Like how much of the difficulty of the project comes from like balancing that cast and basically like figuring out which story threads to pursue and which ones not to? I mean, it like I don't even know if that's like a big part of your
It
equation.
is. It is. Yeah. Well, I mean, the two there's three story threads, right? There are
Hmm.
three main lines that I have to work with, and each one is weighted with a certain amount of importance. Number one always is Emily's thread,
Right.
and then number two would be Naven's thread. But then the number three thread is Trellis's thread, and he's in there too. And so, yeah, I just make sure Emily gets the most energy, if not the most space. Then Naven gets the fun stuff, and uh, and in trellises, it's more like the big stuff. The big is in like societal, the fabric of the political machinations of societies, like having to interact with each other.
Hmm.
All that stuff that gets put into Trellis's thread. He has to deal with having to become basically have the leadership role kind of hoisted on him by people he doesn't like,
Hmm.
and if he doesn't want to continue, and he
Yeah.
has to change, right? Whereas Emily and Naven don't know much about having those responsibilities, except it's being put in their corner anyway, and they're just assuming it, and they're just growing into the roles. Um, and I think that's where the readers are mostly. So I think about the readers first. I go, where are the readers at?
Hmm.
And so where should I put the energy based on where they're at? And as the books have continued onwards, I think that there has been a little bit more energy on a lot of the issues that the older readers would deal with, whereas in the very beginning, it was um, similarly heavy subject matter that young people might have like some sense that they're involved, like they're dealing with it.
Hmm.
For example, kids who have parents who have financial trouble, but their parents don't know how to talk to them about it. They just know the kids can sense it, but they don't know. There's like no clear lines of communication. The kids are actually way more perceptive than a lot of people, understand them to be. Though if they had just remembered what it was like for themselves to be kids, you will remember that you knew way more than your parents thought you did. You can sense it, just the body language of your parents. You know when they're like something's going on in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of times, like in my household, if I brought up those issues, that there might be something wrong, and if I can't like actually articulate a solution to any problems, all I'm doing is exacerbating a problem
Mm-hmm.
in my parents' minds where they don't know how to deal with it. And then when I bring it up, it's like putting salt on a wound, and so then they get mad at me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I don't know why they're getting mad at me at the time because I'm not old enough to see past like why they're acting that way, you know. And as a kid, I remember trying to sort all that stuff out, going like, why are they mad at me? I didn't do anything. I don't think I did.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I didn't do anything, but I brought up something that hurt them that they did wrong.
Right.
And so when I write these books, I'm constantly thinking about that perspective. Like all these kids, the kids and the heroes in this book are just stuck in the position where they're trying to do right, but then they end up having to deal with these people who are trying to fight them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not wondering like, why are these people fighting me? I'm not doing anything wrong. And you're like, oh, you're bringing up something that they did wrong.
Yeah.
So that how can they all work together to right the wrong that's happening? Like that's like a cloud above these people,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's like my favorite heroes in my favorite movies often are those types of people, whether they're heroic or even troublemakers. They
Yeah.
get into situations where they're just kind of get in the middle and go, what's going on? And they help sort things out, like help the people like work together a little bit more. And
Mm-hmm.
then they leave in peace. It's like a Kurosawa movie or Miyazaki or, I often think of Miller's Crossing, Coen Brothers film.
Mm-hmm. So, actually, one of the things you said there, I think is like kind of like the secret sauce of like good stories for people of all ages. Like, one thing that I did this like all ages week feature for Multiversity that I actually talked to you for a few years back, and I talked to a bunch of librarians, and they said one of the things that that kids hate is they don't like being talked down to. It's like they don't want to be presumed that they don't have the emotional intelligence to deal with something like this. So I think that exactly what you're talking about is kind of like, I don't want to say that like if you approach that you're guaranteed to have success with these stories, but I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, and it's not just kids; it's adults too,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
We don't want to be told what to think,
Mm-hmm. Or what to
because we're
feel.
already thinking. Exactly. So I don't know. I feel like that's the hardest part because I kind of know what I want to say,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't just go ahead and just like say, "Hey, this is what you should think," because that's not gonna play very well.
No.
So I have to, I have to put my characters in situations that inspire people to question something, like or
Mm-hmm.
to like look at the situation and go, "Would I do that?"
Mm-hmm.
Or look what they did. Oh man, did they get punished for it? Oh, they did. Or no, they didn't get punished for this. Oh, they didn't. Maybe that's the thing to do. So that's kind of the way you can encourage some kind of action. I
Mm-hmm.
think so. But it's neutral. So because it's not the story telling you, it's just story telling you what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people want to assemble as much as they can themselves. Um, and so that's the hard thing about working with a lot of editors sometimes. Not my editors; they've been fantastic. But we always every time I work with anybody in the publishing world, I always let everybody know how it's going to be with my projects. Like certain things that they can help me with, but there's certain things I'm gonna do the way I know how.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think some people get nervous about a book not being clear enough or
Mm-hmm.
artwork not clear enough, and they want more detail. They want everything like answered. And A lot of it's just that they have this fear that the audience isn't going to get what's going on. Um, One thing I recognized with Flight, and I think is that the Flight 4
Yeah, yeah, right
cover?
behind. Oh, it's behind you too. I also have Flight Volume 1 to my right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'm in good company. I'm not.
I
This
swear to
is.
God, I didn't position that behind me just for this podcast.
But with Flight, I recognize something, and that's that you can make all these disparate elements, these different ideas. People who aren't even talking to each other or know each other. You can
Mhm.
bring things together, and the audience will make the story connections. They'll decide that there's something there, and when they do, they take ownership of the story in a way that speaks to them individually.
Mhm.
The way they connect the stories, that's what they keep to themselves. That's the thing that like they love.
Yeah.
um, and so when I'm writing my stories, I'm always trying to you know it's like being a chef, like just trying out all these different ingredients, not even sure if it's going to make a meal. I just try it. I just see if it'll work, and then I go, yeah, that looks interesting, maybe people like it. And then when it gets out there, I'll talk to the readers and everything, and often I'll see that something interesting happened. A lot of the things that happen between the scenes in my books, I have no control over. I don't know how someone's going to take in something. Um, but I'm gotten to the point now where I kind of know how to, um, like, I just know to believe that something is going to be there.
Mhm.
These two different elements and kind of fuse them next to each other and then present it. I know it's the equation to create some new thing in the minds of the audience, and and I think that's why people come back to the books. It's mostly because even they're surprised that they
Mhm.
were able to connect something, and they liked that feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm just I'm throwing up layups. I know alley oop. I'm just the assist guy. That's where I play
Yeah.
when I'm
Yeah.
on the court. I'm a point guard.
That's
So
great.
that's yeah.
So actually, I have to play off one of the analogies you said. I legitimately wrote this down as something I wanted to ask. This is super random,
Okay.
but was Susie the robot chef a like a metaphor for comic creators or yourself in there volume 7? Am
Um,
I is that too much of a deep
yeah.
read?
I think it's not just comics creators. It's like everybody.
Yeah.
Every field I've been in, there's always been someone like that. Or anytime I meet somebody and I start asking them. Okay, so you go into a restaurant or any situation and you see somebody doing a particular job,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you just assume that they've been doing that forever.
Right.
A lot of people do. They don't think that that person is anything other than the job that that person is doing at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But every single time I've taken the time to get to know that person, they have an interesting story from something that I would never have thought of or expected.
Mm-hmm.
This is like just a part of this long journey that they've been on. And really, if you sit down and listen to these things, almost every single one of these stories is pretty epic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody, just like anybody on the street, you just talk to them and go, "Why are you here? Why are we walking right here on this sidewalk? And how did this happen?" And you find out that like there's like this basically, a story that could make the most amazing TV miniseries is unfolding in front of you. This has happened in so many cases, and so a lot of the characters in the stories represent that. Like when I'm on the road and I'm traveling, I talk to people like on the plane, like in the libraries and
Mm-hmm.
various places, and everybody is way more than their job suggests. And so Susie is very much that, and she has like her own journey, her own story thread has led her to this point, and thankfully for the characters, she did that
Mm-hmm.
because she's the one who is able to assist them
Mm-hmm.
uh, through in their journeys, simply because she decided she wanted to start this restaurant and stuff. So I mean, this type of stuff happens in real life all the time.
Yeah.
So I about that. Mhm. But it's not just about being artists.
Is that something that like kind of expanding the book as much as it has allowed you to do, where you get to take like little sides like that, where, you know, I don't know if Naven was always meant to meet with a chef on an airship, but at the same time, like
Yeah.
that type of thing is a really nice thing that simultaneously adds to the story but also builds the world. I just love
Yeah.
this idea of this like incredible restaurant that flies through the sky that people line up for just so they can go eat at. Like, I would totally go there. It gives the world so much life.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, this happens, like I said before, this happens in real life,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
There are these places, like everywhere you travel to. Every time I'm in a new city, I like look around to see what's the thing to do around here. Like, what is everybody into? What are they proud of? What are they not proud of?
Hmm.
uh, and I want to experience a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, I hope that I'm able to put that into this fantasy world, because then it becomes this like a space that you want to visit, and I want people to want to revisit it every now and then, even if like their whole world is changing around them. They can always go to like books like Amulet
Hmm.
and feel like, oh well, that place is still doing its thing, kind of like revisiting Crazy Cat or something, and seeing in Coconino County things just don't change there,
Hmm.
and it gives you a sense of peace, because you're
Yeah.
like, yep, there's crazy in Ignat, same old brick in the head, same old stuff always happening, and Peanuts is there all the time.
Hmm.
Nothing changes there. Nothing changes.
I do like that you can do that, but you also get like you know, you talked about the book kind of grows up with the readers and everything. It reminds me, I grew up with Bone. Like Bone was a big thing for me. When it starts, it's kind of, there's like a lot of silliness to it, but then it gradually grows into this big mythology and everything. And I don't know, that's such an enjoyable experience for readers. And like I love that we have like there's another generation who gets to grow up with something like that. I mean, I was 24 when the first book came out, and I'm still
Yeah.
I mean, obviously looking behind me, I am repping for Kazu, but at the same time, like it's great that people get to have that. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, no, and now when I didn't see much of that around, it was a real bummer.
Hmm.
I was working in other fields, and I didn't think I was as good as like the masters were,
Sure.
Uh, but I just thought, gosh, at least I'm willing to try to fill that void where I didn't see a lot of stuff that wasn't just a like a rehash,
Hmm.
or wasn't some kind of a like a parody of something,
Right.
or something just so of the moment. All these talented people working just in such a small window. And I just thought, gosh, like only Miyazaki's films were the ones I could watch over and over again.
Hmm.
And I just thought, he's old. So uh, when I was in college, I had this idea that I would just fly to Japan, and I would just, like, rain or shine, I would just stand at the doorstep of Studio Ghibli until they let me in the building. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, just gonna not leave. I was just gonna sit there and say, "You guys need to hire me. I'm willing to go all the way with this stuff and keep it going." There isn't, and I guarantee you there aren't that many people willing to make the sacrifice. So, but at the same time, I think it's good that I'm starting something completely new in a whole different country. I think that's even better.
Hmm.
Than trying to carry on even Miyazaki's tradition. I think Miyazaki's like annoyed because I think he wants all the kids that worked with him to go do their own thing. He's like, get out of here. Stop being here. You know, the, I get that vibe,
Yeah.
but he can't quit. So he just keeps doing it and everybody keeps coming back.
I do love that he keeps retiring and then unretiring like into
Oh yeah.
infinity.
I never take his retirement seriously.
No, no,
Um, every time everyone's like, "Oh no, he's retired." I was like, "Yeah, let's
no.
see. See, I'm gonna take a look. I give it 2 months."
Did you see did you see the documentary about him, The Kingdom of Dreams and Madness?
Yeah, yeah,
That was really interesting to see. But one thing I was curious about is like, um, like when I watched that movie, his process for making his movies is just insane to me because he doesn't actually have a script. He like basically does everything in storyboards. Like I just don't know how that's possible. Like It's such a
That's
fascinating
how I
thing.
work.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, like, how do you work? Like, do you work like that?
Nobody knows what the story is like until the last week of production.
Wow.
Maybe 2 weeks. Last 2 weeks. I just have to. I kind of don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but I do it willfully. I can write scripts. I mean, I am a screenwriter by trade. If you want to take a look at my film degree and what I did in school,
Sure.
um, and it was actually the process of writing screenplays and script reading and taking a look at that process. I always had a problem with it. I just thought this is a broken system.
Right.
We are not building the movies correctly. I think it's really kind of everyone's sort of stuck on these old traditions and they don't want to break out of it. I even wrote a screenplay in college where I actually incorporated images throughout it. So it was a visual, it was kind of like Wimpy Kid. It had images, stuck into the screenplay,
Mm-hmm.
every 2 or 3 pages, just to like wake up the reader, because most screenplays are just hard to read. It's not an easy read.
Mm-hmm.
These are instruction booklets with no pictures, um, and seeing that, I just thought, how am I supposed to convince somebody to invest in this project? I'm only showing them this broken thing that they probably, if they were the creative visionary and not just the people with the money, then they wouldn't even need me to make the thing. They could just make the thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to make the thing for somebody who feels that they are not a creative visionary or just the people with the money, then how am I supposed to get them to understand what I'm trying to show them
Mm-hmm.
if they don't have the tools to visualize this thing the way I would? And I thought, this is broken. No wonder in the film industry you have so many things based on other things.
Right.
Because you read a script and you go, I still can't tell if it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard until it's done. Like, is this a good movie? I think most script readers will tell you, I think it's good,
Right.
but it might not be. And in a lot of cases, people just elevate the ones that are just witty, like the ones that are just like talking to the reader as if they're, like saying like, yeah, wink, wink, this thing happens in the thing, and it's all witty banter.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have like a movie full of jerks by the end of it. And it's not necessarily what the screenwriter wanted. It's just that the screenwriter felt this is how I got to play the game to get something made.
Right.
And you can't blame them for it because it does work. So yeah, I just thought like, yeah, that's not the way to do it. I'm going to go into comics for that reason. Um, and the thing is too, you kind of don't want like what you're making to be overdone, like overbaked.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if I wrote the thing and then I drew the thing, I would lose energy somewhere between, because I'm basically just adapting something I made prior.
Mm-hmm.
So unless I'm changing it as I go, because that could be a good thing. You can be changing it into something new. Then something new happens, and there's something fresh about it. But if you want to preserve the freshness of the content to like its most to its most to its highest potential, it has to be finished at the very last minute. Like it can't be done and then done again.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean. That's a focus. So I'm trying to make it as close to the original spirit of the work as I can. So I try to time everything to be done right at the end. This is why it's important to have colorists help me with the book, because it gives me more time to work out the story.
So do you have like broad strokes kind of figured out? Is that like for the story and everything, or are you? So you do have the broad strokes going, but once you get into that, like, how fluid is it? Like, if there's a character that specifically is speaking to you, like, do you find that you want to keep them going forward a bit, or like a story beat that you want to continue on for more pages than you expected, or how does it work?
Yeah, it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it tends to be about a dozen pages. I'd
Yeah.
say like between 10 and 20 pages is the average for all the scenes.
Hmm.
Like a 20-page scene is a long one for me. Um, 20-page sequence, which is
Right.
like a combination of several scenes. Um, yeah, I don't know. I try to look at the rhythm of the book more than anything.
Right.
Did I move fast through a sequence? Like maybe it's time to move slow. Is this a sequence to build up the idea, or is it a time to execute the idea?
Hmm.
There's a lot of building up and then letting go. Like kind of, the book's got to breathe.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just look at whatever it is I did prior to the scene that I'm working on, and if I'm going to connect it to the scene that I'm working on, then I have to know whether or not I'm going to let go. So
Hmm.
like you just, like let people flip pages quickly, or do you want them to stop and think? And that's really it. I mostly just think of the rhythm of the book.
Do you use like the splash pages, like the beautiful vistas of Eladia or Eladia? How do you pronounce that exactly? Is it
Yeah,
Eladia?
Aleti is fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
Aleti. Yeah.
do you use those splash pages as almost like they kind of feel like pacing breaks to a certain degree? It's like it's kind of changing the rhythm of the story a little bit, and like obviously they're beautiful shots and everything like that. But do you use those in that way at all?
Those I don't really use for rhythm so much as establishing a space.
Sure.
Um, it's almost like a cover for a book.
Right.
I don't know how long someone's going to look at the cover or look at that image, look at the spread, because you
Hmm.
can look at it in 2 seconds. If you're the type of person who just wants to get the info, you're just going to look at it and move on. If you're the kind of person who kind of drinks in the whole environment, then you're going to sit there and study the art,
Hmm.
So I have no control over that. So I only set those up for establishing purposes, sense of scale. You know, I think it's interesting how Miyazaki rarely ever did that in Nausicaa. Like for him, because the panels are so small, like a quarter-page panel is like a spread
Hmm.
in Nausicaa. It's like they feel big because you've been looking at these tiny little boxes, and all of a sudden, boom, like something like that big shows up, and you're like, whoa!
Yeah.
But like in a lot of American comics, that is like just somebody talking,
Hmm.
that size panel. And that's often the case even in Amulet. I have like dramatic shots, like Sergio Leone style, like
Hmm.
looking at their eyes, shots, which are important, I think.
For sure.
Um, yeah, I don't think of it as that hasn't been really a pacing issue. I assume that people do slow down for that. Um, but what I will do is that there's always something that establishes the space before we get into dialogue, so that
Mm.
at least the reader can have that uh, just in their mind. The space is in their mind as they're seeing the dialogue.
Mm. Hmm. You know, the interesting thing about your approach is it kind of almost sounds like, I mean, especially with the fact you have three theoretically disparate threads with Trellis and Naven and with Emily, it's almost like you're kind of doing like a one man anthology where you're like kind of approaching it like, here's a 20-page chunk, here's a 20-page chunk, or like 12-page chunk, et cetera, et cetera. Is that, I mean, like, is that an unfair statement? Is that kind of how it works?
No, it's not. It's exactly right. It's more like more like an album,
Yeah.
like a music album,
Mm-hmm.
and running three threads. So I've tried to run four, by the way, and it pretty much broke. And so I just know that three's kind of my max right now.
Sure.
I mean, I think you could do four, but you just have to do longer books. And 200 pages, and Amulet 8 is no longer than any of the other books. It should technically feel like the longest book in the series. Maybe even by panel count, I think I actually added more panels than any of the other books. So there's actually more content in there, but there are fewer pages than uh, Amulet 6, Amulet 4, and Amulet 2. Those are 224-page books. This is going to be 208. Um, I didn't want to. Yeah, I also didn't want to just like explode this thing. Um, but I did spend more time on this eighth book than in any other. Um, so yeah, essentially going back to like that very first thing that you were talking about, I'm trying to, I'm basically trying to get the idea in the minds of the audience and not so much on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing it like with an album, like having songs like sitting next to each other, like one, two, three, four. There's about 15 sequences in a book,
Mm-hmm.
and I have to pick the 15 beats that I'm going to put in there. And depending on what those beats feel like, um, it's gonna articulate some kind of emotion or idea that someone's going to want to go back to, just like they go back. You never listen to your favorite albums just once. You always like, oftentimes it's the ones that you listen to once and thought, that's okay, that become your favorite
Right.
over time. The ones that sound good right off the bat pretty much wear out after the second listen,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always trying to get the ones that like, I'm trying to make an album each time. I'm trying to make an album that might not sound great the first time you listen to it, but maybe the 10th time you listen to it, you think, oh, this is really special. Um, and so having these, like, getting these parts together and then finding ways to like have them be farther apart and like, you know, and know that the viewer or the reader is going to be able to connect these things themselves.
Mm-hmm.
How much trust do I have in them to be able to do that?
Yeah.
That's how I expand the books.
Mm.
Like this, like the ideas are more like different,
Right.
and and yeah, and then there's more space between each of the sequences in terms of like the idea of the content in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if like if you have like some crazy, Jack Kirby, like big space sequence in a story, and then the next thing is about cooking. Like I feel like you will remember
Right.
that transition. So jarring but interesting. You're like, oh, whoa, we were just with Galactus, and it was like huge and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden we're just talking about how much like cilantro you put in something. And I think that'll be something you'll remember.
Right.
So I love stuff like that. I try to find that in the story if I can, because then it'll get people to remember. Like Susie's Cafe was just, that wasn't in the script or anything. There wasn't a script for that. I was just going on that journey, and I realized that that could be a thing. And I thought, let's roll with it. Let's give them jobs in the kitchen. Let's just let's just
Yeah.
make it. But that, and I also wanted to talk about what that's like working someplace is fun. It's an adventure to have a job.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was able to get that in there, and and that surprise is what you'll remember. You're like, that's surprisingly fresh. That's cool. I
Yeah.
didn't expect that.
I love the look at the restaurant, like the 2-page spread that has like the look of the kitchen with the dining room up top. Like that was
Oh
such
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was fantastic. I
It's like
also am like
a
very
busy town moment.
I'm also very much firmly on record of saying I wish that Western comics had more food comics. So the fact that a food comic
Oh,
was injected into one of my favorite Western comics worked out perfectly for me.
yeah, nice. Yeah, exactly. There should be more sports comics. That's what we need more
Do
of.
you say
Good
sports
sport.
comics?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't. I have mountain biking in this next one, and I
nice.
guess that's a sport. That's a sport, but I mean, like, team sports. I think
Yeah,
there should be more.
I that's sports and food are like two things that manga does pretty well that we don't do at all. Like I have on my shelf over here a basketball manga, and it's like I would love more basketball comics. I mean, like basketball's enormously popular
Slam
here.
dunk.
What's that?
Yeah. Is that slam dunk over there? Or
God, I'm trying to turn and I don't think it's slam dunk. It's actually, yeah, it is slam dunk. But
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
That was huge. That was a hugely popular comic in Japan.
yeah, no, it's awesome, and I love the fact that those comics exist. And I don't know, I find it interesting that that type of stuff doesn't happen as often with Western comics, and it's like I feel like to a certain degree sometimes in like Western comics we have like a more narrow view of what comics are, and like they can be so much more than that. And I don't know, that's an entirely different
Yeah,
aside.
No, it's not. This is a very relevant topic, and that's just goes to like um, the nature of how isolated the comics group has gotten. Like this little bubble
Right.
that people were in this industry. I had been generally outside of that bubble. Even when I got in there, I was kind of an outsider, um, and I always found it interesting that that people would do that to themselves in a sense to try to close off from the world. And you know, maybe it's just a reflection of a lot of comic artists feeling like they were ostracized when they were kids or something, and then
Right.
they found solace in comics, and they don't want other people in there. So, you know, people have this intention to keep others out. And I see that happen a lot because they want to maintain ownership over this thing. Because they feel that once a lot of people are in there, that they won't feel connected to it anymore.
Right.
And they might be right. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, they may be bullied out, and that's so it's. I can understand why they feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why I'm not out there like, come on, let's go like true mainstream comics. I mean, we'll do it. You know, it's
Right.
fine. Amulet is that. So, but I don't think it needs to be at the expense of the people who have become the connoisseurs of that world.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you don't need to like shovel other people out
Right.
for mainstream is. I think that's what we're seeing a slow transition to what you just talked about of comics for everyone. You know, and a lot of that's going to come about when you know those types of comics do so well, and they will.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that um, there's so few books like Amulet or Raina's books that our books end up having an outsized impact simply because there's nobody feeling the need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what it comes down to. Um, Otherwise, I'd probably be an editor, you know, because I think I could play that role pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, I wouldn't be able to find you five books. I wouldn't be able to find you five committed graphic novelists that like could see the vision and stick it out. I couldn't get people to do that when I did Flight, so I'm not going to be able to get people to do that until people see clear evidence that the world is accepting of this stuff,
Right.
and then we have problems to worry about. And yeah.
So, I've had Heidi McDonald from The Beat on my show a few times, and one of the things that she's talked about is the fact that she thinks single issues are going away, that like the monthly comic format is gone or is going to die eventually. She may be right, but like my kind of perspective on all this is that the future of comics is going to be a lot more fluid, both from a subject standpoint and a format standpoint. And I think like I don't know. I mean, it's like you already see, like, you mentioned how like comics are more for everybody now, and like you see that with things like I always reference this comes up all the time, but like Ngozi Akazu's Check Please, like that's a book that had a massive Kickstarter and it was about hockey and relationships and all kinds of stuff, and like that's not a normal thing, but it was done in an atypical way. And like that's one thing I think is really interesting about 2018 in comics is like you came from a like when you were doing Flight, you had people like Jen Wang and you had people like Eric Moen and Jake Parker, Vera Brosgol, et cetera, and like just the first volume.
Yeah.
And like back then, it was like cartoonists or creators didn't have as many options. Now, like creators of that quality could kickstart their own books. They could do web comics that have potentially larger reach, and I just think that's really exciting. I think that's really great for the future of comics.
Yeah, I mean, there's never been a better time.
Yeah.
To be honest, it's you know I hear a lot of people saying like, "Oh, this isn't working," and stuff. And I go, "Well, you know, the venues are available. If it's not working, it might be because the comic's not working at the moment, and that's
Right.
okay. Because I have comics that didn't, you know, that don't. I've had projects that didn't fly, and that happens. But yeah, I think at this point, you know, the fact that you can you know, all you really even need, you don't even need a computer even. You could probably just do it on your phone. You
Mm-hmm.
can make comics and have an audience immediately. I mean, it's a big deal. So, um, Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Copper on my website, I wouldn't be here doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be in corporate somewhere. You know, still.
So I just have a few more questions before we jump into questions about you, the person. But I did want to talk about your art for a second. In another interview we did in the past, we talked about you being labeled as I'm going to do air quotes so you can see, but they can't, quote unquote, the cartoon guy, because of how you draw your characters.
Uh,
But I mean, like we talked about the splash pages. We see that like you're fully capable of painting and doing heavy detail and doing these amazing vistas, but you choose specifically to render the characters in that way. Like, is that why do you make that choice? Do you feel like going that route with the characters brings what do you feel like it brings to a story and its overall accessibility, having like more simplified characters but having like more rendered backgrounds, I guess?
yeah, I mean, it's in understanding comics, right? The more detail you put on the faces of the characters, the less it becomes a person you can identify with,
Sure.
and becomes an other person.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes somebody else, and I use that to like a heavy effect in Amulet, where the people that I want people not to relate to immediately tend to have more detail on their faces, and as
Mm.
they become more relatable, they become less detailed. Someone like Trellis is it's hard to identify with when he's got lots of bags under his eyes.
Yeah.
But the fewer bags there are, yeah. And on the opposite end of that, I've been playing around with the idea of not seeing faces as well, like with the Elf King becoming just a symbol and not even a face.
Mm.
You can't relate to that, but it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about simplicity. It's about whether it's like identifiable,
Mm.
like is it, and if it's a mysteriously identifiable thing, then it becomes an other as well, which I think is very interesting to play with. Um, but yeah, I do that on purpose so that people can feel like they're traveling through these fantasy worlds themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Much the same way that I felt I was traveling through movies watching Muppet Babies when you know Miss Piggy and Kermit and crew are traveling in Indiana Jones or something like that. And I thought, wow, it's like they're in the real world, just like me as a kid trying to navigate the real world. That's neat. So I do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do a lightning round on a few quick art things that I wanted to talk about. First off, I grew up on the Final Fantasy games,
Yeah, me
and
too.
I was like a huge fan of Final. Well, in America, it was 2 and 3, which were 4 and
Yep,
6, and so like
yep.
the Red
I'm right there
Wings.
with,
What's that?
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, like
It's
so
my
like
favorites.
Cecil's Red Wings
Yeah,
airships, and then in Final Fantasy 6 there was like Setzer's amazing flying casino thing. And like
yeah.
ever since then I've been like absolutely obsessed with airships. Thus why I love flight, because like you're very much in my realm. I am kind of curious, like do you I'm guessing it's a yes, but do you have a particular affinity for that kind of thing, or is it just something that clicks for you as an artist?
Yeah. I mean, my brother and I, when Palom and Porum turned to stone to save the crew, we
Yes.
actually had to walk away. We had to put down the controllers, wipe our eyes, and go outside. We
Yeah.
actually had to stop playing because it was so emotional for us. Uh, and yeah, like playing those games, Final Fantasy 2 and 3 in the States with my brother were probably the most influential, seminal moments for, making Amulet. I think back on those days when Miskit is on the crew with them. It's like having it's your little squad,
Yeah,
your
yeah,
team.
totally.
And as you probably notice, even in the story, it's happening. It's becoming like those stories where you have Trellis as the white mage
Mm-hmm.
and Emily's actually the dark mage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you have the elder, like Tella, with Vigo,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got all the same stuff, robot suits and stuff like that. It's all very similar.
Oh man, I swear to God, when I saw the suit, especially the ones where they were in Lucian, I was like,
Uh-huh.
"This is freaking Magic Check armor." I know
Uh-huh.
it.
Yeah, that and Mega Man.
Yeah.
Like when they're in there, I wanted them to look like Mega Man suits as well.
Oh.
So yeah, I was referencing all that stuff. So when it's fun watching people our age make stuff now, like the Duffer Brothers making Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, we watch the same stuff clearly.
Yeah.
Uh, and you're celebrating that. But it was the same for people who were making things like Star Wars or whatever. It's like what they're watching in the 50s, just like old Flash Gordon serials and things like that. They're trying to level up all that old stuff. I think we're doing the same thing, and the kids that are reading my books are going to do the same thing when they're older.
Yeah.
And they're going to go have this nostalgia for Amulet. Like, remember those days we had those parties? Like, we'd have a slumber party and we would just read Amulet all night. Oh man, I know it's happening.
Yeah.
And then they're going to make and I figured that they're like, I used to want to make movies. Now I figured they'll be the ones who get the movies made.
Yeah. Except for Amulet will actually be a 12-part Netflix series.
Yeah. Maybe someday. Oh, that could happen. It's possible.
I do have to ask, because I'm such a super fan, do you have a Locke equivalent? Because Locke is like one of my favorite characters in the history of fiction. I don't know why. I love Locke.
I forgot Locke. What was he?
Locke was the thief who first discovers Terra and helps her get out in Final Fantasy 3/6. And
it's a Leon Redbeard type.
Yeah, kind of Leon Redbeard type. I do. Yeah. I love the fact that you have, it makes sense for me in my head because of, Leon Redbeard and Miskit effectively disappear for a book or two, or is it just one book?
I forgot. They're on and off. In this final book, not number 8, but the next one, I think they're going to play a much bigger part again. They are in this book. They're in number 8 as well. But yeah, they have taken the back burner.
Yeah, they felt like main characters early on, and then they kind of stepped out, and I was like, oh, I just switched his party out. It's cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just that they were kind of the early education guides, right? They're like kind of the introductory guides, but now they're coming back in the story. So, and I think that, maybe that represents something, that maybe it is your early education that ends up coming back later. Yeah. when in times you don't expect it,
So one of my other fast art questions, we did an interview before, and in it you said you love rendering water, which in my experience is like a major outlier in the art world. Why? Yeah. Why? I don't know. Like, I feel like I actually went to, in Portland, they have an exhibit for Leica Studios, and it's fantastic, but they have this whole section about how much of a nightmare it was to do the water in Kubo and the 2 strings.
Oh.
And like, it was like they were kind of showing how that they were trying to like showcase it. But I mean, what is it about rendering water that you like so much? I know that's a very deep or like specific question, but I was curious.
Oh, I think it's so easy. It's so calming for me, but that's also because I spent so much time surfing, bodyboarding as a kid, and I just studied water. Yeah. Because I was sitting there for hours, freezing. Yeah. In the water, just watching waves. Mm-hmm. And like sometimes wondering, where's this wave coming from? And then I go hiking all the time now, mountain biking, and I just like watch the rivers and stuff like that, take pictures of streams. It's just, I'm personally into it. Mm-hmm. I like, and so it gives me peace when I paint it and draw it. And I feel it's very quick to render water because it is, it's never about rendering water. It's about rendering everything around it. Mm. Because it's really just it's like glass, it's a reflection of things. So you can quickly make water by basically turning that surface into a reflection of everything else. Mm-hmm. And to me, it immediately, it's water when you see it, like things reflecting off of this thing, and it's not like a perfect reflection. It's just like a little bit, there's like some dithering, with the ripples and things like that. And people immediately think, oh, that's water. And it's like such a big idea. Mm-hmm. It's like such a low budget, high concept idea to paint water. You get so much out of very little. Yeah. If you have the knowledge. So I'm all about that. Yeah, it's great. That's awesome. Love it. Water's a great shortcut to magic.
So the last art question is, I reread the whole series in preparation for this. I think it was like the third time I read through it, like at least through 5. But I wanted to mention one thing I love that for some reason I've really noticed this time. I love that Mori the robot sweats all the time because he's so anxious.
Oh yes.
Yeah, like it's a super nice touch. But do you try to give all the characters like kind of specific visual traits at that level, or was that really just a Mori thing?
Oh, Well, Maury is like a lot of people I know, including my mom and myself sometimes. Uh, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. Having him sweat was an easy way to make him look nervous.
Yeah.
That's all. It was just it was a quick cheat. It's the same. Like it's like when you do the cartoon pipe.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that person doesn't care that much. You know what I mean? Like it's not supposed to make you want to smoke, which is where like I guess Jeff's Jeff got in trouble with Bone because Smiley's got a pipe.
Right.
I don't know why I don't get in trouble because Vigo, I mean not Vigo, but Enzo has a pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I think it's supposed to show like being careless or aloof, like kind of like I don't care about my health. So you have little like cartoon. There's a cartoon lexicon that you can kind of go to as a shortcut to make you feel like that person.
Yeah, I love those. I love those little things because they say a lot without you having to like specifically call it out, and it was a very nice touch.
Okay, cool.
So let's close with 5 questions about you, Kazu Kibuishi, the person, and we're both we share a mutual fandom. We're both Seattle Mariners fans. I'm gonna
Mariners.
Nice.
Yeah.
They're actually playing right now.
Oh yeah.
Poor Nelson Cruz hurt again. I did want to ask those to start with. Who? This should be a pretty easy one. Who is your all-time favorite Seattle Mariner?
Oh come on.
I know. I had to ask.
It's Ichiro.
It's Ichiro.
Suzuki, of course.
Yeah.
So he's back on the team. I'm excited. He's old, but he's really old. Not compared to me, but
he's 44.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's older than me. That's awesome.
I do want to say the last time we made the playoffs was his rookie year, so I feel very good about that addition to our team, just from a positive feelings standpoint. I like that, and he did have that amazing home run robbing catch in the first series.
Yeah, no, I love the makeup of the team currently. It's really about health. If they can keep the pitchers healthy,
yeah,
that they're a playoff team. I think it's clear. They have a strong lineup.
Yeah.
And last year went to a game just watching Mitch Haniger hit. I was like, man, this guy's so underrated.
Mm-hmm.
He's got such a clean form and power too.
Yeah.
Like where it doesn't even look like he's got that much power, but he does. And just seems really disciplined and just seems like a solid baseball player.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool to see that he's like right off the bat is doing excellent. I think that's gonna be a huge addition. The fact that they even have him like hitting cleanup now because of Nelson Cruz out.
Yeah,
that's a big deal. Yeah, they got and also the addition of D Gordon, that was like hugely under the radar, I thought. During the off season when everyone was talking about Shohei Ohtani.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was like a lot made about that, but I was almost more excited about the addition of D Gordon during that, because I thought, see, if they can get more speed
mm-hmm.
and like disciplined hitting,
yeah,
you win.
Right.
You win. You make it fun for the other team. Just make it harder for them. You don't need a bunch of guys bombing home runs all the time. That's not going to win you the games.
Mm-hmm.
Not the close ones. And it also gives you a false sense of comfort. Like you kind of lean on this idea that the bombers are going to come in and save you.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm all about small ball, and it's much more fun to watch. So I'm glad that they have really good, quick, disciplined, hard-hitting, smaller dudes.
Yeah. I have to say, I'm pretty sure after that first series, he's immediately everyone's favorite Mariner, because that like Ken Griffey Jr. swing he had on that home run, that was so perfect.
That was cool.
All right, so next, August 19th is Amulet Day at Safeco Field for the Seattle Mariners as they play the Los Angeles Dodgers, which is like underrated. A really great part about it, because the Dodgers are awesome, so it'll be a really great game.
Oh yeah.
So I know you're a professional, but be honest, did you fanboy out a little bit when that came together?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was, I've known about it for a while now.
Right.
It's been, yeah, of course. I mean, this is like, it's it's emotional for me because I loved playing baseball as a kid. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I got a little bullied out of it. That's one of the reasons why I stopped playing. It was just I just didn't want to hang out with my potential teammates in high school because they were all dealing with their own social things and stuff like that. So they decided to just we were all friends too prior to high school, and you know, I couldn't even get out of the dugout without getting hit or called horrible names. You
Oh
know?
man.
And it was because just me and the one other Asian kid that were gonna try out, we decided not to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and we decided to just go to other sports and other things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I decided to put like a very baseball, you know, like a baseball discipline mentality towards my art.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this could be my baseball. And you know, if I'm not going to even get a chance to get in the batter's box, how can I even play that sport?
Right.
They won't even let me in. So I go, well, if I can't get in that door, I'll go through this one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this goes on to the whole like just being Asian American thing, right? Because I saw Jim Lee succeed,
Mm-hmm.
and hey, if they let him through the door on that one, maybe I can go that. I can go that. So Jim Lee had a huge part in inspiring me to move forward with comics. So this is why, like, you know, when people actually bring up diversity stuff these days, I know that's a hot topic. And they're like, do you need to put more, you know, diversity in the comics? I go, you know, not so much in the comics. I'd rather see it like in the making of them,
Right.
You know, because that actually had a huge effect on me. I think comics should just be neutral on their own. The content should be enjoyed by all.
Right.
I think those are the strongest stories. You know, you don't have to make the content be so specific to a particular group of people.
Right.
You know, but if the creators of these comics are of all different races and all different genders and all different, you know, just different ages and everything like that, and we see that has a huge effect. Yeah. Silently, there's going to be some kid who looks at that and they'll say, I could do that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a big deal. You might not see the results of that until years later. But I mean, look at me now. This is thanks to Jim Lee and like Will Portacio and those guys. I felt like I was. It made me confident enough that somebody wouldn't hit me in the shins on the way to the batter's box. I guess that's the way to put it.
All right, next question. You're a huge Hayao Miyazaki fan. We've covered this, but if you wanted to, like, I know a lot of people are intimidated by anime in the same way that they're intimidated by comics or manga or whatever. If you want to get someone into Miyazaki, what would you start them with?
Oh, start them with?
Yeah.
I don't know. Spirited Away, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spirited Away, and then I'd go to My Neighbor Totoro,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe Delivery Service, and then if they're kind of getting bored with stuff that seems for the younger audience, then I'd send them to Porco Rosso,
Mm-hmm.
and then Mononoke. Really depends on the person, I think, because you know, it's pretty wide ranging. I think his work isn't, you know, not everything is for everybody.
Right.
Like I'd say The Wind Rises is just not, there's like a whole lot of people that I know who really don't like it, and a lot of people who it thought it was really important to them. So, you know, that one's a very particular one. Mm-hmm. For someone in their 20s just trying to make it as an artist.
Yeah. The one that got me was Castle in the Sky. Yeah. I mean, airships. I was connected. I was like, oh yeah, airships. Yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, of course. Love is huge in my world. I often just hear the sound of the horn in my head. the morning, the song. Yeah.
So you work in a studio most of the time with Jason Caffo? Is that?
Yeah, sometimes he's in here. He's mostly at home working in his home office because he's a stay-at-home dad.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay. And you also have your wife, Amy, there with you. I'm curious, like, what do you listen to is there something you like to listen to while you work? Are you a listening or like a podcast guy or music guy?
It depends on what I'm working on.
Yeah.
If I'm writing, I can't listen to lyrics. So right. I'll listen to movie soundtracks sometimes if I need. Most of the time I don't listen to anything. When I'm inking, I can listen to anything. So at that point, I'm listening to podcasts. I put games on. Baseball's actually great because you can listen to baseball. It's great. Like listening to basketball and football is pretty okay, but I feel bad for the commentators because they have to move quickly, and it's not as exciting as listening to baseball, I think. Or at least it's not it's not the same. I'd rather watch football and basketball.
Yeah,
But
they're also a lot more active.
Yeah, but I can totally listen to baseball. It's very calming. And yeah, and then when I'm coloring, it's anything. It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's like coloring's the most fun and easy part. It's just like that's why I hire people to help me with that part, because I know it's fun. I'm not asking them to like just destroy themselves. I mean, it's hard. It's hard work. The writing, that gets to be pretty heavy duty.
So last question. You're a big movie guy in general, and I'm going to set you up in a situation. You've had a hard day in the studio. You've been working your butt off, on some of the more undesirable parts of the process. You go home, do all your home stuff, and when everyone's off to bed, you put on a movie to help you unwind and enjoy yourself. Something you've seen before. What do you turn to? Is there like a comfort food movie you like turning to?
No. I would never turn on a movie on a day like that.
Really?
Because that's like work to me.
Because you get analytical about it?
My antennas are out, and I want to pick it apart, and I made the mistake of watching like shows and movies just before I went to sleep. And it's not good. It's revving up my brain before going to bed.
Yeah.
So I'll have like nightmares and things like that. Because my brain's trying to work out the story. So I don't watch stories when I go to sleep. Sometimes I'll read a book, but I almost always will just play games, like just to unwind. That unwinds my brain. But I will watch movies at the start of the day, and if I had to watch something if I had to watch something generally to relax, it would just be, there's only really one movie, maybe two.
What is it?
And that would be Akira Kurosawa's Dreams.
Oh.
I have I have that on my laptop. I have the Criterion Collection DVD, and I'll just put that on anywhere on it. We'll just go to any of the vignettes. And it usually kind of locks me back into what I want to do with my art. So I see that movie, so it puts me at peace.
Yeah.
It's very peaceful.
That's awesome.
And the other movie would be just the opening scene for Speed Racer.
Oh.
Yeah, I would put that on sometimes just to just kind of remind myself what I want to do too. It's very affecting.
Yeah, I've never actually seen the Speed Racer movie. I need to see it.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's one of my favorites. I don't blame anybody who doesn't like it, but almost none of my favorites were like universally acclaimed or received well.
Sure.
They tend to be pretty 50-50 selections. They just have something that I get out of them. Yeah, so.
Awesome. Well, Kazu, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with cartoonist Kazu Kibuishi. You can find him on Twitter at Bolt City and on his website at boltcity.com. If you're a fan of the show, there's some big news. Off Panel now has a Patreon. If you like the show and want to support it, consider backing it on Patreon at patreon.com/offpanel. There are fun rewards and insider information you can get if you do. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Jason Hassey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Dan Lee, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McRae, Ira James Udaskin, Benjamin Birdie, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Britta Batista, Abraham Reisman, Adrian Diaz, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Michael Perlman, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Christopher Carter, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Don't forget to like the show on Facebook at /sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter at @sketchcomic or follow me at @slicefriedgold. Want more from Off Panel? Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens and closes the show now. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.